boys and girls. Ken Smith, KenSmithFishing.com, loving on a dog here. So do something a little bit different this week and see if you guys like this. So I did not get on the water this weekend, but I've got a couple of good lake reports for you. I listen to a lot of podcasts. I drive quite a bit in my work, and I fly quite a bit too, and I like listening to podcasts. So although I think most of the time, especially because I post a lot of fishing footage, guys will watch my videos on their computers or on their phones or on their tablets. I thought maybe it would be fun to do sort of a every other week report where we don't just talk about Rayburn, but we kind of talk about different topics from around the country. So I thought I'd do that and see if you guys enjoy it. So you can just plug this in. You can watch it today, or you can plug it in the morning or this afternoon on your ride home or on your ride to work, and just sort of get a little bit of fishing updates. So let's talk about things that are going on. I'm going to refer to my notes a little bit just because I made some notes to remind myself. I do want to remind everybody, I don't want to go way down this rabbit hole, but we're going to have a ton of people coming to the lake. Obviously the big bass splash is coming up at the end of April in Rayburn, so we're going to get a lot of people who don't fish as much as the rest of us do. And there was quite a bit of talk about this last year. I posted something on the Texas Fishing Forum. There is a rule in Texas, and I'm not going to get into it. Anybody who knows this rule, please put some notes below. By the way, I think I've got my my audio fixed, so you should be hearing me on both channels if you're listening to me on your headphones. There is a rule in Texas that says if you wear an inflatable life jacket, and there are multiple types. I think there's a class 1, class 2, class 3, but on I believe all but one of those, if that's what your life jacket of choice is, you must either wear it all the time in the boat, or you must have a non-inflatable backup in a box. Not a throw cushion. It's got to be the type that you actually zip up or snap on or whatever. I'm only telling you that for those of you that come to Rayburn. It's a very expensive. If I remember right, it's over a $300 ticket. And as I recall, the game wardens were not writing warnings; they were writing tickets. So if you're an inflatable personal flotation device wearer, and you're coming to Rayburn, either plan to never take it off or just be safe and stick a backup one in one of your rod boxes or in one of your side boxes just to have it, to avoid getting a really bad ticket, because the game wardens at Rayburn, I know for a fact last fall were writing tickets for that. So that's number one. Number two, FLW this week on Grand Lake in Oklahoma. This is going to really be an interesting tournament. So I've talked to several. We got a bunch of buddies up there fishing it, and some of these guys haven't had a bite. So we're recording this on Tuesday. So they have finished their practice. They've practiced Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday. Some of them have not had a bite. I have not talked to anybody, and these guys are telling me the truth, that has had 5 bites in practice. So they all believe with the water warming that these fish are going to eventually come shallow. They're just all hoping it happens tomorrow, Thursday and Friday for them. If you saw, there was a big team tournament up there this weekend. It took 27, 28 pounds to win that tournament, but those guys apparently caught those fish on an A-rig, and of course you can't fish an A-rig in an FLW tour event. Weigh-ins, if you never have tuned in, it's a live weigh-in. Usually I think it'll probably start at 2:30 or 3 on the FLW websites. You can watch that Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. It's always fun to watch those weigh-ins. And I think they have live action Saturday, Sunday mornings, off the water action as well. This weekend on Rayburn, so we had the Outlaw Outdoors. Actually, we had the ABA. No, I'm sorry, I'm going to get that wrong. I apologize, guys. I get them confused. ABA or the Weekend Series. Either way, Ricky Guy won that tournament. If you forgot, so Ricky and his partner Bobby Weiss won the weekend before the Sweet 16 tournament with 27, 28 pounds. And then Ricky turned around and won again this weekend on Saturday with 21-ish pounds, if I remember right. And talking to Ricky, he said basically the lake is in a tremendous transition period. I'm getting a lot of people asking me how they're going to catch them for the big bass splash. It's changing dramatically. So the full moon was last week. The water continues to fall. He said he's seeing water in the mid to high 60s. He said that he's catching most of his fish just sort of around the bushes, if you will. I know several guys tried to sight fish, but Ricky and I talked about this quite a bit. The problem is most of the lake is so off color, you can only see down a foot or two. And if you do much sight fishing, especially in our part of the world, those big fish don't like to spawn that shallow. So he's catching fish that probably are spawning, but they're out there in that 3 to 8 foot range where you can't see them. So he's literally just casting to targets. I didn't ask him baits. I'm gonna guess either, and I didn't ask him, but I'm gonna guess either a lightweight Carolina rig or a Mojo type of a rig, or very likely a Cinco. By the way, I've got something special coming for y'all that are coming to the Big Bass Splash. I'll talk about it again in the next week. I'm going to put something together for you that I think is really going to help you. Those of you who don't know Rayburn, who are coming to try to catch a big fish, I'm going to give you some ideas on some big bass baits specifically for that tournament. But that's coming. But that's pretty much what Ricky said. He said he had been on some flipping fish, but as that water has dropped out, those fish have gotten almost impossible to catch. He did say that one of his fish this weekend he caught off the nest. It was about a 4.5 pounder, but he said he kind of just found that fish while he was looking, or while he was fishing along. What else did Ricky tell me? And by the way, so I have heard from other sources now that the best, most consistent bite right now seems to be a swim jig, swim bait type of a bite. There was the Outlaw Outdoors, no, I'm sorry, in that tournament Saturday, I believe the co-angler got up on stage and he said that he caught a whole bunch of keepers, and I believe he said he was either throwing a swim bait or a swim jig. Either way, you know, shallow moving bait. Talked to some guys. Then on Sunday there was the Outlaw Outdoors Average Joe tournament. I talked to Robert Saltzman. Robert Saltzman. He and Clay Phillips had the big fish of the tournament at 921. They finished in 4th place. I think they had 17, 18 pounds. I'm going to take a break for a second. I want us to look at a message real quick. I wanted to check a message because I had asked Robert, was that big fish a pre or post spawn? He said it was a pre-spawn fish. And by the way, Ricky told me that the big stringer they had the week before, those 5 fish, 4 of them were pre-spawn and 1 of them was post-spawn. But it sounds like the vast majority of the fish came up shallow on this last moon. So I think even this next weekend you're going to be fishing for, you know, post-spawn shad or bait fry protectors is what you got to fish for. If you've never done that, by the way, Sammy just ran into the tripod. If you've never done that, all you're doing is going down the bank and looking for little wads of fry, and they look like a little tornado a lot of times. They're just kind of circling around. And when the water's clear, if you'll pay attention and look, a lot of times you'll see mama or daddy sitting right under them, protecting them. And you take a Cinco and flip in there on top of them, and they'll scatter, but your line will just start moving off because she'll be right there under them, protecting them. So, also interesting, and Ricky said this as well. He said, you know, when they caught the 29 pounds, he said, we found those fish that day fishing. And if I remember the names right, so the Average Joes this weekend, Chris Clemens and Dallas Cole won that tournament. Sorry about that, guys. Sarah got home and I wanted to go say hi to her. If I remember right, I think Chris in the tournament the day before, the Saturday, the one I can't remember the name of, I believe he only had 8 or 9 pounds. So that suggests to me that they're doing the same thing. They're just continuing to move and ran across a group of fish. I didn't say what Robert and Clay told me they were doing. They told me they were flipping isolated deep bushes, and he said anything that just had little tiny stuff sticking up out of the water, which is going to be your deepest bushes. I don't know if they were on points or on drains, but that's something to think about. I will tell you, and I made a comment in a video earlier, probably 3 or 4 weeks ago. The biggest fish I ever caught from Rayburn, I believe, I didn't weigh the fish because I was practicing, was exactly that. It was a big isolated bush, and I threw a Cinco next to it, and boom, she bit it and swam off with it. It was 10, 11 pound fish. So don't ignore those isolated bushes. If you just crawled out from under a bush or a rock and didn't know, Ott Defoe won the Bassmaster Classic last week. I think the new single day record, which for a very short period of time was held by my buddy Dickie Newberry in an FLW tour event or excuse me, in an FLW event. He had 36 and change at Rayburn several years ago. It got broken a month or two later by a guy at Chickamauga. I think it got broken again last week. Brent Butler in the Chickamauga tournament had 37.5 pounds for a 5-fish stringer. Pretty sure the news said that he caught those fish on an Alabama rig, which is how they catch those great big stringers up there. So that's a gigantic stringer. He won that tournament with like 68 pounds. So he caught more than half his weight in a 3-day tournament and on the second day. And I think kind of came out of nowhere to make the cut. So that's a giant stringer. I do want to give a shout out to one of our young Texans. Dakota Ebear was out there and he had a top 20 finish. I would be willing to bet he's never been on Chickamauga before, so good job there. And I think Tommy Dickerson cashed a check over there as well, so good job to Tommy as well. What else do we want to talk about? So we've got a big college tournament coming up next week. FLW college tournament will be up at Texoma. That should be interesting to see. Let me think about that. So they're probably going to be between a dark and a full moon. The guys at Grand are saying the water temperature up there is in the mid-50s, so that means the water on Texoma is probably getting really close to being right for those fish to maybe start spawning on this next dark moon. I've actually caught them on Texoma spawning really, really well the first week of April several years ago in a tournament that Billy Klein won up there, and he was sight fishing. Matter of fact, if I remember right, he caught a 7 or an 8 pounder like on his last cast and had to just basically throw the boat, fish in the floor, and take off. Oh, that reminds me. Great story I got to share with you guys. So I'm talking to Ricky Guy tonight, and we're talking about the big bass splash. And he said, you know, I won one of those. And I said, or he said, you know, we won one of those. And I said, no, I didn't know that. He goes, yeah, several years ago in the fall. He goes, you've never heard this story? And I said, no. So here's the story. So Ricky flips, I think by a bush or under a cypress tree or something. It says, flips a brush hog, and fish bites it, and he pulls on the fish, and he says he sees the fish flash, and it's like a 2-pounder. But he says something's not quite right. There's something, excuse me, I got a gnat flying around my head. He said he's fighting this fish, and something doesn't feel right. And he says the fish goes by the boat, and he said there's a giant, he said the fish is hooked, but the brush hog is on the outside of the fish's mouth as he goes by. And he said there's a giant trying to get that bait out. He said, Bobby had a frog out. He said, Bobby, reel your bait in. He reels it in. He goes, I'm going to turn this fish and drop a bait when he comes by. So Bobby lays the frog down. He goes to the back of the boat, turns it, and walks the fish back by. And when he does, Bobby just free spools a bait right in front of that fish's mouth. And boom, that fish bites it with 30 minutes left in the tournament. He catches, I think he said it was a 9:45 to win this big bass. I think they either want a truck or a boat, but that's a great fish story. He said, I swear that's the true story, exactly how that happened. I love that story. That's almost as good as the Corey Rambo story of catching, I think, a 9-pounder on a crankbait that he had hung on a stump, and he was shaking, and the fish come up, got it, and took off with it. So I think that's everything. I'm going to look through my notes and make sure there's nothing I've forgotten. But either way, give me a thumbs up if you guys enjoy this. Again, I know it's not fishing footage, but if you enjoy it, I'll start doing more research and including more stuff in these, so you've got kind of a drive time a podcast, if you will, even though it's not a podcast. Hey, Bo, where I can give you some of your fishing news on every other week or every week. And I think we might enjoy that. I would certainly think I would enjoy it, but I need to know you guys are going to enjoy it. If you do, I'll continue doing them. So let me look at my notes, and Will be right back to you. Okay, I knew there was something else I wanted to add. I just couldn't remember what it was. So this weekend on Rayburn, tournament schedule this will be the 30th. So there's a Fishers of Men, there's a Media Bass Individual, and there's something called a Team Elite tournament. I don't know what that is. But what I do want to mention, and I apologize, I don't have information on this. If somebody would please put a contact below for the Stan Burgay Scholarship Benefit Tournament. If you guys don't know Stan Burgay, we lost Stan a couple of years ago. Super guy, he's from Center, Texas, great fisherman, great crankbait fisherman, one of the nicest guys you'd ever know. So there's a benefit tournament for a scholarship. Again, I don't know anything about that, but if somebody will put it in the comments below, I will pin those comments and I'll add it to my commentary so everybody knows who to contact and what that tournament's all about. So that's something big that I would love to see all of us. If we were in town, I would definitely be down there fishing that. And then on Sunday is the Outlaw Outdoors Sweet 16 Championship. I'm thinking Steve will be fishing that by himself. And now the Sunday evening Poorman's Tournament is also taking off. I believe that goes out of Monterey. Same thing. I know somebody who watches these videos can tell us when to be there and what the entry fee is and what the hours. So stick those in the comments below so everybody knows. Anybody that's around on Sunday evening wants to fish the Poor Man's Tournament, they can fish that as well. And then also on Tuesday nights, there is now the Sam Rayburn Jackpot Tournaments. And again, I don't know, it says sign up at Tackle Addict, so that must be off the south end of the lake. Anybody that wants to promote that, just stick it down in the comments below. That's all this is about, is so we all share information. Thanks so much to the guys who talked to me this week. And again, if you enjoy this, throw me a thumbs up or give me a comment that you like this, and we'll keep putting up additional news from around the country and around the lake. And thanks for tuning in, guys. And please subscribe if you don't. We'll talk to you all soon. We'll be back on the water in 2 weeks. We'll see you then.